All right, Dr. John Delony, if I want to feel terrible and feel anxious and feel like the world is crashing down around me, what are 6 things that I can do?
I could probably give you a list of 100 things to make your life really, really tough.
Today's video is sponsored by Seed. If you're worried about your gut microbiome, you're trying to make some changes, but ultimately, if you're trying to add carbohydrates back into your diet after doing low carb for a long time, very important you take care of your microbiome. So that link down below saves you 25% off of Seed's Daily Synbiotic, which has a prebiotic and a probiotic in one capsule. So a capsule inside of a capsule. Super interesting technology. Very, very cool to check out. So they also fund a lot of microbiome research. So they put their money where their mouth is. A lot of the proceeds go back into research because we're trying to understand what these little microbes in our gut do and how important they are. So anyhow, that makes a big difference. Made a big difference for me. I don't usually recommend probiotics because a lot of them are garbage, but this one's definitely worth a shot. So that link down below is in the top line of the description for Seed.
Man, if I was to give you 6 things that you could do systematically to erode your well-being over time, or better yet, to force your body into a state of trying to get your attention all the time, I would tell you to be unintentional and judgmental about everything. That guy cut you off, get really pissed and make up a reason why he cut you off that probably involves he's a millennial and he does drugs and he hates everybody, right? I would tell you to stop paying so much attention to your physical body. Who cares what you eat? Who cares if you sleep? Enjoy the next thing that you want to do. Who cares about what happens tomorrow? That's a problem for future Thomas, right? I would tell you that childhood trauma, let it roll. Like, just let it roll, man. It happened in the past, wham, wham, move on with your life, right? I would tell you that believing in something bigger than yourself is stupid. That's what idiots did or children do. You are the captain of the ship of the universe. Your job is to hold up planet Earth and the cosmos, so you can do that. I would tell you, forget belief. It's so stupid. I would tell you to indebt yourself as much as possible. Borrow as much money as the bank will give you so you can have cool, shiny things. Get as big a mortgage as you can. Leverage a bunch of things. Buy tons of Bitcoin. Like, do all of the hip, cool things that Instagram tells you is cool. It's going to bring you momentary happiness. Just keep doing that forever. Probably the final thing I would tell you to do is choose disconnection. Have friends on the internet, but you don't need people in your real life, right? It's such a weird, oogie thing to do, to like be around real people. Yuck. So I would tell you, just have friends on Facebook. That's fine. And then just YOLO, man. Just do life by yourself.
All right, let's unpack this. Okay, so the first one, basically having a reason for everything happens to you. Like, someone cuts you off. That was a really great analogy. Let's kind of unpack what this looks like, because I think this is something that we all do, right? We all think we create a label or a reason and we pass judgment on just about everything that happens in our lives. Can you explain what this looks like and maybe how we can navigate around it a little bit?
Yeah, the difference between being unintentional, just doing the next thing in line, and being judgmental, having a story. You walk in the house and your wife left wet towels on the floor and you instantly go to, she didn't care about me, she didn't respect me, we talked about this. The other side of that is mindfulness. The other side is aware, like, oh, there's towels on the floor, and being curious. Man, she knows that's a big deal to me. What must have happened in her day that this happened? I'm gonna clean these up and I'm gonna go do the dishes, man. Because she knows this is a big deal to me, and the kids must have been bananas today. Her work must have been wild today. So I'm gonna take care of this. One of these is an instant protect myself response. Another is a thoughtful, slower, I care about our marriage more than I care about being right now, right? And maybe we get to the end of the day and she comes up and goes, did you see I left those wet towels? I'm tired of listening to what we'll deal with that when we get there. But me creating a story all day and dumping cortisol and adrenaline into my body and walking around in a state of rage, or I don't get mad at my house, I leave. I just flee, right? I run. Instead of doing that, I'm gonna stay present with it. And that kid cuts me off in the car, and it's always one of those Hondas that's like real low, and he went to the store and was like, can you make it sound like this? Like, it's always that kid. He cuts you off listening to music. I can instantly grab my wheel of my car and get so mad. and man, that kid's doing drugs. Or he can cut me off and I can exhale and say, dear God, I hope he gets to the hospital before his wife dies. I get to create one of those stories. Neither of those stories affect him. Zero of my stories affect that guy. He's just going about his day. One of those is going to lead me towards empathy and I would argue better metabolic health down the road. The other's going to give me a stroke. And I get to pick one of those, right? It's mindfulness.
Do we sort of have this like innate need to like create a story with everything? I mean, because in like an ideal world, would it be you just let it go entirely, or is creating the story sort of part of who we are and we have to craft a story? It just, we're at a fork in the road with what story we craft. Like when you're actually meditating and you can just, there's a thought and let it go. Is that actually practical to happen in real life? Or is creating a story just what we need to do? We just have to make sure that we're conscious of the story that we're crafting.
Well, it's kind of like you go to jiu-jitsu practice every day for the one time you walk into a grocery store and somebody's attacking the woman at the register. That'll happen one time in your life. And all that training is for this moment, right? Similarly, you meditate every day so that your body creates a default setting when somebody cuts you off. And I skip my meditations a lot, right? I skip it a lot. And so I think we have to understand that our bodies are always cranking out stories to figure out why our bodies feel the way they do and to create a world that might be predictable tomorrow. And it's always going. And so often the energy I expend is I try to get upriver best I can, but often my energy is best spent asking myself when that story pops in, is that true? You get an email from your boss at 4:00 on a Friday. Hey, come by real quick. I need to talk to you about something serious. I'm fired. This guy is the worst. I can do that. Or I can stop and say, is he the worst? No, he wouldn't fire me like this. He's probably got something important. He's calling me. He's trusting me at 4:00 on a Friday. And so I'm going to head in that way, right? So I often am trying to catch my stories as they unfold, but I think we need to make peace. Most of us, unless you're a monk, most of us need to make peace with our bodies cranking up stories all the time about everything, always.
Now, I mean, there's an entire cascade of hormones and catecholamines that happen if you choose path A versus path B, right, too. I mean, I think a lot of us know that if you choose the stressful adrenaline-packed route, that doesn't feel very good. But
it feels powerful, though. It does feel like you feel superior to that guy.
Yeah, it feels very alpha, right?
Yeah, well, it feels a way to like,
good.
I would never do that. I'm this kind of person, and they're that kind of person, right?
Interesting.
And when your body goes to fight or flight, it instantly divides the worlds up into us and them. They're those guys, and I'm this guy. And it's just a way to feel
They
superior.
should be like me.
Yeah, they should care more about, right, while I'm texting and driving and whatever, right?
Exactly.
But it's a way for our bodies to instantly divide up the world. Who's on my team and who's not?
And if you go the other way, I mean, I would imagine there's probably oxytocin, there's probably a number of other things if you start kind of like going the empathy route, right? Being like, oh man, I have some compassion for the situation of what could be happening, and just kind of the cascade that happens after that.
If you ask me what the most important psychological finding in the last 100 years is, personally, I go to Martin Seligman's work, which I thought was so powerful. In psychology, we always thought forever there's an Eeyore and then there's like an optimistic, like a Tigger person, right? The bouncing tiger who's always like, everything's great and and then there's just somebody who wakes up and it's like, it's the worst. Yeah. And what he showed is optimism and pessimism are learned behaviors, which means if you say the word learned behavior, that tells me, as much as it pains me to say it, a learned behavior means it's a choice. That means every day if I practice looking for beauty or looking for light or looking for another reason why this guy cut me off. Maybe my boss just cursed at me because she's a terrible person. Maybe she cursed at me because her home life is tough and she just snapped a little bit and I'm gonna have a moment of compassion. And I'm gonna circle back around and say, hey, I'm not cool with you talking to me that way, but not right now. So I get to pick that approach, and man, at the end of the day, I want to control everybody so badly, I can't. I can just control my thoughts and my actions. And so the more I practice optimism, the more I practice joy, the more I practice looking for the flowers in the concrete, the more over time that becomes my default setting. And so if somebody cuts me off and I exhale. That's what special forces do. That's what police officers do. That's what people train and train and train. So when things get wild, they slow down, right? And I think we can do that in our marriages. We can do that with our kids. We can do that with our coworkers and our neighbors. And I think that's a systematic shift of this really anxious world we got.
And it doesn't necessarily require everyone to do it to change your life.
You can't require everyone to do it. It's just, I can just control me, man.
All right. So moving on to the second one. What was our second one?
I don't remember what order I said them, but I think the second one was, let's go with health and healing.
Okay.
This idea that I can create this world that's pain-free, that is discomfort-free, and I can completely forget about this physical body I've got going. This body that endured traumas, this body that was the wrong color on the wrong side of the road. Whatever trauma you've dealt with, here we are. I don't have to deal with the body part of this. I can think my way to mental or emotional health. If I get all the right thoughts in the right order, then I'm going to be mentally healthy, right? Or I'm going to be emotionally well. And it's just not true.
Yeah, there's always going to be a physical piece with that. And I guess we could talk ad nauseum about the metabolic piece of it, but which kind of came first, the chicken or the egg with that, right? Because it's like people get into this perpetual cycle where if only I can get my mindset right, then I can get my body right. And then kind of like, okay, well, if only I can kind of have this happen, then I can get my body right. Well, if only I achieve this physical result, then I'll be happy. Yeah. And it's like this constant leapfrog of like really going nowhere, leapfrog on a treadmill almost. You're just like, how do you get out of that hamster wheel?
Man, over 2 decades of sitting with hurting people, I think at the end of the day, most people don't like what they see in the mirror. And I'm not talking about only aesthetics. They don't like themselves. And so when you don't like yourself, you look up for a way to feel okay in your own skin. And the last 25 years, we've been bombarded with, well, it's got to be because of this, and it's got to be because of that, and it's their fault, and it's this, and if you just eat this, or work out this, or get this surgery done. And so every one of our feelings is outsourced, and we just pass it and pass it and pass it and pass it. And all of it is avoidance of looking in the mirror with both hands on the counter and looking at yourself and saying, I like that guy. That guy's working hard. He's trying to be the best dad he can. She's trying to be the best mom she can. And when you avoid that, man, you are just playing whack-a-mole with feelings and physiology and emotion. And when feelings and physiology and emotion get all tangled up, you don't do the next right thing, right? You invited me to work out this morning. I didn't get into it late. I was tired. I didn't feel like doing it. The next right thing for not only for today, but for tomorrow, for 2 days from now. 2 days from now, I got a funeral. I had a family member pass away. I am putting deposits in today when I didn't feel like it so that I can show up for my family in a few days, right? That's disconnecting yourself from this whack-a-mole game and looking in the mirror and saying, do I wish I had a couple more hours of sleep? Yeah. But I'm a guy worthy of being loved, and I'm a guy worthy of taking care of myself. And I'm also a husband and a father, and the only way I can show up for my family is if I do this for me today, right? And it just unhooks it all. But that took a long time to get to that place where I was okay looking in the mirror and saying, I like that guy.
Yeah. For me, it's funny because sometimes it's literally the opposite situation where I need to look in the mirror and realize that I need to take a day off from the gym. Yeah. I need to stop. For the betterment of my family, I need to not break myself down to the point where I'm destroyed, right? Yeah. And you don't always like the person you see in the mirror. You're being like, I'm on this hamster wheel of, once again, whack-a-mole. I have to look a certain way for what I do for work. People aren't going to trust me if I don't look this way. And I hate that person I see in the mirror. On to the next. Boom, 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 boom. Yep. And it's just this system when in reality, it's like, hey, stop, breathe, love your body, appreciate yourself. And also just, I teach my kids that, for example, when they look at food is fuel, and think about how you feel, right? It's just that simple fundamental piece. But I like your whole sort of visual metaphor of the whack-a-mole piece, right? Like, how does someone, are there any tactical tips that people can deploy as sort of a pattern interrupt? Like if they're in that game where you're just lost, right? You're just whack-a-mole, whack-a-mole, whack-a-mole. How do you throw that pattern interrupt in there, like to shock you out of that a little bit?
I'll tell you the one that I usually teach everybody, and then I'll tell you the one that my counselor challenged me with that stopped me in my tracks. The one I usually tell folks when they are playing whack-a-mole, usually the whack-a-mole is those stories. I can't take a day off. I can't take a day off. I've got to do this today. And if I don't do this, then this is all what's going to happen. I'm going to lose this sponsor because I don't have this % body fat, and then I'm going to get here. He's going to cheat on me if I don't look like this. She's not going to if I don't make this kind of money, right? You just start creating stories and stories and stories. And the greatest gift you could give your family is a day off, right? That's tough, right? That's tough. And so I tell people, I carry around, it's in my bag over there, dude, and I wish I had some like fancy, cool, broed out way to say this, but it's a journal, man. It's a thoughts journal, and I write it down. Are you really the worst dad ever? And I get it out of here and I put it on a piece of paper and I look at it and I say, are you really the worst father? Really? If you skip one day, are you really gonna go from this % body fat to 42%, right? Really? No. And in fact, are you gonna feel better? Yeah. Are you gonna show up the next day? And so I like to pull those thoughts apart and challenge them. It just stop in my tracks. Sometimes I'll be writing them at a stoplight when I'm driving and the machine's going. Often for me, it's being in the shower by myself, and I'll just start having imaginary conversations with my boss or with a sponsor. I'm gonna tell that guy, dude, you're not gonna tell nobody nothing. You're not gonna have that conversation, but your body doesn't know that. And it's gearing up to go to war, man. I'm gonna tell my wife when I'm not gonna tell her anything, man. And so it's stopping that stuff as it happens. Is my wife really leaving wet towels on the floor because she hates me? Is this how she's gonna tell me that she hates me? My wife, she would happily tell me, all right? She'd happily come to me and tell me. So that's number one. A harder one was, and this is within the year, man. So this is pretty raw still. Sitting with a trauma counselor and finally addressing some stuff I had never addressed before. And we're going round and round, we're talking and we're talking and we're talking. And finally she says, and I was like, what? And she goes, you have 2 PhDs. You're smarter than me. Congratulations. We're done talking now. And I was like, I'm in therapy. And she goes, I want you to take your fist. I want you to put it right here in your chest. And I want you to say the words, I love this guy. And I was like, that's the stupidest thing. Like, no. And she goes, no, you're smart, and we can talk in circles all day long. I want you to make a fist and put it in your chest. And she goes, if you do that, we can go back to talking. And I was like, okay. So I couldn't do it. It was the strangest out-of-body experience. I was like, okay. And she's like, waiting. And I sat there, and then I just started crying. I couldn't do it. And I was like, that's just so weird. And she said, all of this stops until you be okay with you. And so my team, like people will often see me at the office, they'll see me out and about. Sometimes I'll just gently, when I'm starting to go down a rabbit hole, this team should have done this. I can't believe the newsletter didn't get out on time. I can't believe this. Nobody's gonna buy my book or whatever. I'm still all right. I'm all right. Because I show up for my wife and I show up for my kids. Am I perfect? No, I'm trying hard, right? And that was an exercise. And in this culture, it sounds self-serving. I'm a person of faith. They tell you never do that and that, but this idea that like, no, I'm worth putting my oxygen mask on so I can show up for the people that I've told I'll show up for. And so it's just as simple as that. But you have to you have to practice that thing, saying it over and over. And I probably say it too much now, but it was a tough shift for me.
Yeah, man. I mean, it kind of segues into one of the other ones that you mentioned, which was not addressing your traumas, right?
Right.
Like it's perfect dovetail into that. Mm-hmm. So with that, okay, maybe you've had things you haven't dealt with. Everybody has things they haven't dealt with, in various magnitudes. Like, can you elaborate a little bit more on how trauma, even in our childhood or even recently, sort of affects our operating system in this moment today?
Yeah, I think we need to get away from talking about trauma as a mental health thing. It's encoded in your nervous system. When you're a little kid and I have to get between dad and mom when dad gets home. I have to, or mom's gonna get hit. Your body has a series of responses that it sets off automatically to protect the house, to protect your mom. That's just how it's wired, man. And then 25 years later, you get married and you hear your wife's car driving up the road. Your body put a GPS pin in that and it kicks off the same thing. And without even thinking about it, I might find myself singing and dancing when my wife comes home. Or I might find myself slowly disappearing when she comes home. Not even think, I love my wife, she loves me. But that stuff's wired in there until I address it. And the key here is trauma, and Gabor Mate talks so eloquently about this. Trauma is not the thing that happened. In fact, we do know that our memory is not great at exactly what happened, because that's not what's important. What's important is can I think about this stuff in the present, and will my body respond as though it's happening back then, right? It's my body's response to this stuff right now, and trauma overwhelms your systems, man, and it goes to your default settings. And so I didn't realize that some stuff that happened to me when I was a kid, man, this is as raw as I can be. Here I am, I've got a show, I teach people about parenting and about relationships and marriage and emotional health. And my dirty secret, and I talked to some mutual friends about it recently, my daughter wouldn't hug me, man. I had a 4 and a 5 and a 6-year-old girl. She's amazing, she's a human hurricane, but she wouldn't hug me. And it was my wife who said, hey, you're always talking about this neuroception, that your body's scanning 24/7. What if that little bitty girl, what if her body has identified you as not safe? And I was like, man, I don't yell, I don't scream, I don't hit anybody. She goes, I know, but I can feel this nuclear reactor that's inside your chest that's always like this. And what if that little girl's body's saying, that guy's not safe? And that's what ultimately got me into counseling for real. And I guess it was a couple months ago that I said a sentence out loud without thinking that I couldn't have imagined saying, which was me saying, will you get off me? Because she was all over me, right? And so it's this, my wife says that she can feel it here, but it's just my body responding as though I'm back to being this old, and I have to go through a couple of practices that say, okay, I wasn't okay then, I'm safe now, I'm good. And slowly over time, my wife has become a place where I exhale. I drop my shoulders, not a place where I have to tense up and perform, right? And I did one of my practicums under a phenomenal, just a savant childhood trauma counselor. And one day we were working with some kid and I said, this is what kid's doing great. And he looked up at me and goes, hey, John, straight A's can be a trauma response too. To the kid with 2 PhDs saying, does somebody like me? Will somebody like me, please? Can I prove to you I'm smart? Please, let me prove to you I'm smart. And him saying, dude, kids will get their parents' attention, whether they get in trouble, whether they make straight A's. Their bodies will figure out the path that's best for them to avoid or to create, right? And so on the other side, I have a son who's 13 who is very affectionate, very like, hey, Dad, let's go do this stuff, let's go do this stuff. And I realized, oh, his body's doing the exact thing my daughter's is, just in reverse. His body said, I'm gonna fawn, I'm gonna get real close to this nuclear reactor. That's where I think it'll be safest. And my daughter said, I'm gonna get away. And so ultimately, your body will continue to respond month after month, year after year. And this isn't because you're weak, this isn't because you just need to toughen up. That's stupid, man. This is about dealing with your nervous system and teaching your body, I'm okay now, right? I'm okay now.
I think it's such a good way to describe it for people that would normally see it as just a very cerebral thing.
Yeah.
When you put it into a way that helps them understand that this is your body and how your body's reacting, that puts it in a sense that people can really grasp it. Because if you start going down the mental health discussion, people resign to the fact where I need help. This is going on with the billions of neurotransmitters in my brain, and I can't, But when you actually put it into a sense of being like, no, like the reason you feel this way, maybe the reason you can't sleep, maybe the reason you need 6 cups of coffee in the morning, yeah, it's up here, but what you're feeling and how it's manifested through here is just your default response.
Yeah.
And when you put it like that, it really lights a fire under your ass to want to fix it and want to do something about it.
That's been that's been something that's been rattling around in my mind for a decade, and it's really come to the fore the last 2 or 3 years is, what if all this anxiety and ADHD and chronic stress and burnout, what if our bodies are right? What if they're not screwed up? What if I don't need to go to somebody to fix my anxiety? I need to look at the world I'm living in, both at the micro level and the macro level, and not get mad at the smoke alarm for going off because my house is on fire. In fact, high-five it as I run to put out these fires. Yeah. I don't think our bodies are the problem. I think often our bodies are telling us the truth. I think they're working great. That means we have to deal with this chaos we've created.
That is an amazing point. Like, what's wrong with my body? What's wrong with my body? It's like, no, your body's doing exactly what it's supposed to.
Yeah.
Autoimmune, all these things we deal with. And it's just like, when it gets to a level of autoimmune, from sort of a very simple way of putting it, it's just like it's gone on so long that the systems are all starting to say, okay, we're all sounding the alarm at once now, right? Like, this has gone to the master alarm, not just the smoke alarm, not just the carbon monoxide, not this, but no, all of the above.
Right.
Your house is burning, fix it.
And I want to eat what I want to eat whenever I want to eat it, and I want to stay up all night, and I want to scroll and watch the next Netflix and the next Netflix and the next Netflix. I want to text back that woman who like makes me feel alive. She's beautiful. She thinks my jokes are hilarious, but she's not my wife. Like, I want to keep doing these things with no consequence. I don't want to deal with any of the stuff. I just want to keep going. I want to make this much money. I want to live on that street. I want to drive this car, regardless whether I can afford it or not, because they'll give me 70 months, no interest on the loan, right? Of course our bodies are screaming at us. Of course.
Yeah.
And then you have to begin to peel it back and unhook yourself from the matrix and say, man, thank you, body, for working. I got to do something totally different.
Let's pivot now to the relationship side. One of the things you mentioned was closing yourself off. Tremendous way to feel terrible.
Yeah.
Opening this with, do we get even remotely the same physiological, emotional effect from having a text relationship or a social media relationship with someone than we do in real life, in the flesh?
So I've tried to track down studies and I can't find them. If any of your listeners have them, I'd love for them. Please put it in the comments because I'm desperate to find them. But the anecdote that's been in popular culture forever is 70 to 90% of human interaction is nonverbal. And so suddenly we've dumped all of our interactions to zeros and ones to text communication. So I'm lopping off, 70 to 90% of what my body needs to get what you're saying. And so I can text my wife, I love you, I love you, I love you all day long. And she's processing the data, right? She sees it in black and white on that text message and my little cute kissy emoji, right? Like a picture too. But her body feels safe when I walk in and that nuclear reactor is not live. When I'm not anxious, when I know my home is warm and I put my underwear away and I walk straight over and ignore the kids and give her a hug and look her in the eye and say, I'm happy to see you. And she sees my eye crinkles and she puts her hands on my face and my body does this. All of that is profound communication. Or I walked into your place. Everyone here was so hospitable and kind. And my tribal sense that's wired into me went, great people. Right? This is cool. And you and I both walked into a room full of special forces guys that are like, there's a lot of testosterone in this room, right? A lot of sizing up, a lot of looking like, which is right. That's what they're trained to do. And I kind of love that. But you walk into that room and I know I'm going to get real quiet because I'm the lowest on the totem pole in this room. Or you walk into a punk rock show or a bar. Yeah. And your body just is like, we're high alert, right? Yeah. All that's data. And when you take all that away and just outsource it to this and this, man, not to mention, this is unpopular to say, especially with all the stuff going on in the world, but our bodies just are not designed to be so profoundly empathetic and to absorb all these images of every single tragedy across the world at the same time. We have a limited capacity, right? We're designed to be empathetic and profoundly invested in a small tribe of people. And now I can scroll and see everything going on planet Earth at the same time. That's a systematic overload. The way I used to describe it with the college students I worked with is they're getting to college and they're having seen 1 million deaths on a screen. And that's not a real stat, by the way, I made that up, but they're seeing countless people die on screens, but their parents didn't let them go to their grandparents' funeral because they don't want to feel sad. So they've never been in a room where somebody's dead. Or they're growing up with pornography being their sex ed, and so they've seen thousands of sex acts. They've never burned a whole movie sitting next to somebody trying to like hold their hand. You know, you kind of brush against it and you're not watching the movie. You're just like, is this going to happen? Is she going to move or not move? There's an art to it, and you just blow right through it. There's an in-person, our body's designed for this human interaction on a bunch of different levels, and we've just completely wiped it off the table. So of course our bodies are screaming at us, man. I only know who I am because I'm in proximity to you, and vice versa. And we just cut it all off, and we just live in these little worlds, man.
I set a rule where I no longer do any virtual collabs. People ask, it's just a rule. I will come to you. Yeah, I will pay my way. I will come to you, because I don't want to like say it's low quality, because the information can still be quality, but I want this.
Yep.
And you know, we went a number of years blocked off from this, and I ain't going back. Right? I want this. Yeah. And it's so it's so amazing, and just the chemistry that comes out even in the content delivery by reading you and you reading me, and how we can collectively help people. It's so much more. And there's something that, you know, you lose that. It's and how many things get lost in translation just via a text or an email? Like, oh no, you got my tone all wrong. Yeah, you do. I'm like, you know.
Why are you mad? What?
I'm not mad. Yeah.
Like, I had diarrhea and I was trying to get to the bathroom and I was texting you, I'll be there at 8. And you're like, why are you mad? Like, I'm not even thinking about you, right? And then now your body's responding, and he's always mad when he texts, and poof, right? And now we're off to the races.
Exactly.
What a mess, right?
Okay, so another one that you mentioned was sort of freedom. By kind of sacrificing your freedom would be a great way to like feel anxious. What does that mean?
So when I talk about freedom, I'm not talking about like American flag underwear and like eagles, like, oh, that's not what I mean. When I talk about freedom, we have a culture of what I call culture of disempowerment. These things happen to you, whatever they may be, and I'm gonna be super straight, they're real. They're very real, right? People have endured crazy tragedy. That's been my whole career, sitting with people when the wildest things have happened. Groups of people treated a certain way. That's all very real. And then the culture comes in and says, because this has happened to you, because this awful thing happened to you, you're always going to be less than. I'll come fix you. I'll come get you, because you're not enough. You'll never be enough. And this idea that you're the worst thing that ever happened to you, you're the worst thing that you've ever done, right? And so you need to outsource everything. You're never going to be enough. You need to borrow money from me, because they're never going to pay you enough. You got to borrow from me and I'll take care of you. You are never going to be enough. Your kid's probably not going to make it. So I am the travel soccer coach for 9-year-olds. Your 9-year-old needs to give me $10,000, and y'all need to travel for the next 14 summers. Give your summers to me. We'll fill your calendars up 5 days a week, because without me, man, your kid's not going to make the team. And if he doesn't make the team, he's not going to make the high school team. If he doesn't make the high school team, he's not going to college. You know how expensive college is. And you don't want your kid to be the weird kid, right? And so we look up, and I need another shiny thing. I need another shiny thing. My wife was asking me the other day, I do this for a living. And she's like, do we need another guitar in here? Really? Is that, like, are they going to call? Like, is your band, is Metallica finally going to call you? I'm like, they're not going to call, right? So we go after shiny things. And suddenly we look up, and I don't get to decide what I do tomorrow. My mortgage company does. I don't get to decide what I do tomorrow. The car dealership that I finance my car tells me what I'm doing tomorrow. Hey, that boss isn't safe. Too bad, you're going to work. Like, they don't pay me enough. Well, it looks like you're getting a second job, because you owe me now. I'm telling you what to do. Or we outsource our calendars, and our calendars are so full that if we miss something at 5 minutes on Monday morning, the whole week falls over, because it's just this constant perpetual go. Clutter when it comes to just stuff. We're surrounded by stuff. If you can Google the data on storage spaces, we have the biggest homes ever created in human history, and that's not enough. We have to go buy places to put our stuff in other places. And so we find ourselves completely hitched to all these other things. If I just get these shoes, if I just get this car, if I just buy this house in this neighborhood, my kids go to this school, as we talked about earlier, then I'm going to be okay. And then you get there and your body just moves the finish line, because it's never about that in the first place. And so the nerd word is autonomy. The nerd word is agency, right? When your body recognizes you're in the backseat of your own car and somebody else is driving your life, it will sound the alarms. It will try to get your attention that you're not okay. In fact, if you work with Special Forces too, when you sit with those guys, they're in the most chaotic, wild situations you can imagine, but their bodies know through training and through camaraderie, through teamwork, they're driving. Your body won't sound the alarms in the most chaotic situation if you're behind the wheel of your life. But if you're in the back seat and your bank's telling you what to do, and your soccer coach is telling you what to do, and your calendar's telling you what to do, and all your crap is telling you what to do, it will sound the alarms. And so I go all the way back 15 years ago when my wife and I were like, I can't live like this. This is madness. We were both working fancy jobs at a university, and I managed to dig us into a financial hole that was pretty spectacular, man. Hundreds of thousands, like in a home, in student loans, and all this wild stuff. And I was like, hey, I can't breathe. I can't breathe in my own house. And so we made peace with what I call the Corolla life. And I was the dean of students at a law school, and I was driving up in a $3,500 Ford F-150. Not because I'm special. It was a 1994, dude. It smelled like a lawnmower. It was awful. But it was mine. I paid for it cash. And my wife was driving around a Corolla that would not die, but it just kept going, right? And over time, we slowly took all that money that would have been for car payments, we paid it off, and we rented a long time until we could deal with the mortgage company. And so I look up 15 years later, and if my boss suddenly is like, you're gonna do this, this, and this, and this, or else, I can just smile and say, like, have a good week, man.
Yeah, I've got my Corolla.
I got my Corolla.
Yeah.
And dude, like my wife's parents were school teachers, and my dad was a policeman and a minister. We didn't have anything, right? This is us figuring it out as we go. This isn't like we grew up these lavish lives. In fact, it was seeing what our parents went through that I was like, dude, we got to do something different, which meant a lot of years of people laughing at what we drove and laughing that we were still renting and making fun of us, to get to this place where I just want us to be able to live the life that we want to live. And you love me? Yeah. Do you love me? Yeah. It doesn't matter what I drive. I'm good, right? And it changed, and now we're at a position where we can kind of buy what we want, and now we especially don't have to, right?
Yeah.
So that's that idea of freedom. I'm not going to give agency to my life. And this one's hard because this one is super countercultural. Why are you driving that car? Your parents will get onto you. We worked so hard for you to drive that car. That's mine though. I own it. I own it. Yeah. We worked so hard for you to live in that small of a house. It's mine. Yeah. You know, and there's to that. And so if you begin to look at your life and say, who's telling me, or if you're married, like who's telling us what to do? Who's running our life? And slowly begin to pull yourself off. You may have to move. You may have to get a roommate for a couple of years. You may have to work 3 jobs to get out of the hole you've dug. But dude, the piece on the other side of that it's incalculable, man. It's incalculable. And then in the Instagram bro world, it's like, man, you should be taking out this mortgage and investing the gap and taking the capital here and rolling it over. Man, you know what I do at night? I sleep.
Yeah.
I sleep hard.
Dude, it is way simpler than the internet makes it out to be.
Way simpler.
Yeah. Sometimes explaining it in a simple sense can be very off-putting and seem threatening at first because it's not what you really want to hear, because
right.
It makes it sound easy. Just borrow this money, do this. It's easy. Like, everyone's in debt. Who cares, right? Okay, everyone's also miserable.
Yeah.
So do the math. Okay, it's the big and kind of umbrella of a lot of this is belief.
Yeah.
And people might kind of tune out and think, oh, belief, it's only religion, it's only this. No, you already kind of alluded to it. It's just believing in something bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
And I think this is probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest one, if you ask me, for someone, especially people that, like, for myself, right? I live in a world where I feel like I have to look a certain way. I have to act a certain part, almost existential in a sense where, like, okay, I'm already in shape, I'm already lean, I've already got a good business, like, but I'm still seeking more, like seeking more. And rather than just like trying to grab for more, sometimes you have to look, okay, it's all right here at the same time, right?
Yeah.
Really curious your thoughts on this and how people can take something, even if they're not a person of faith. How does having just a belief in something bigger come into their life?
So let's back it all the way up. For those who, let's pretend we're talking to people who have no faith context. They think the whole thing's insane and they don't believe in anything. Okay, let's start there. I like to go back just to the evolutionary psychology. For all of human history, people crawled out of their tents and looked to the sky and say, dear God or dear gods, please rain or my family dies. There was this natural submission, and every civilization in human history came up with some sort of system that they could rest into. It flooded because some being got mad. It didn't rain because some being was punishing us. The crops were amazing because we were in favor, right? That's story over generation after generation after generation is wired into us. That's a part of who we are. And then in the last couple of 100 years, we've solved for some of these problems that have plagued humanity for all human history. Like, you can just push a button on your phone and food just shows up at that door right there, right? We can go in that room right there and turn a knob and water just comes out. These things that were no way, right? We've solved it. Like struggling with finding a mate. Well, now we can just keep swiping and there's millions of people, right? We've solved for some of these big challenges. And in so doing, we've gotten really arrogant that we're the center of the universe. And over time, when you become the center of the universe, that sucker gets real heavy. And then you have a culture that starts to say, well, you just need to get a little bit leaner. You just need to make a little bit more money. You just need to be a little more of this. Your kids need to wear these clothes. You just need to drive. You start to spin. And when you start to hold this up, as the great David Foster Wallace says, we're beings made to worship. That's just deny it. And that's an atheist saying that. We are made to worship. And you will worship beauty and you will never be beautiful enough. You will worship money and you'll never have enough. And on and on. You will worship shiny things and you will always want to go get the next shiny thing and the next thing and the next thing. And so there's something about unplugging and owning, walking outside your front door and saying, please rain, because my family, I can't hold this up anymore. You can see what's happening in a culture that by and large has clipped all the strings to belief. And Jordan Peterson calls it the common narrative. Esther Perel, who's on the other side of the political spectrum, calls it these universal narratives, right? That bound us all together. We clipped them all overnight. And in so doing, the only thing we have left to worship is comfort, how I feel. And then I start going down a path, like this is how I feel, and this is how I feel, and this is quote unquote my truth. And you get further and further away because I just don't want to feel this anymore. And I create a wall around me, and I expect you to bend to my wall, and you expect me to bend to your wall. And all of a sudden we just get a big mess. And so there's something profound about stepping back and saying, I can't hold up the universe. I just can't. I'm not going to anymore. And if you submit to what I would call a universal consciousness, you can call it our higher power. My family's Christians, and so we believe in Jesus and God. You take a knee to something bigger and say, dear God, please help. Please help. Please accept me as someone worthy of being loved. And it's not a matter of tightening your grip. It's a matter of opening your hands and letting go. I didn't get this. I talk about this in this book. I didn't get this idea of letting go until my boss, Dave, he's the best peer pressure guy on planet Earth, man. And he said, hey, we're all going skydiving. If I got on this counter, my heart rate would go up to 190. I hate heights. I hate them with all my heart. And one of my coworkers immediately responded, no way, I'm out. Next person, I'm out. And then I just said, I'm in. And I hit send, and immediately, had nothing to do with skydiving. I just want to be like them. Dude, I didn't sleep. I was hoping to cancel, rain, anything. No. And then when I got there, this big tatted up former special ops guy clicks me into him and kind of waddles us to the door, and we jump out. And it was that moment of, right? And it was just settling in. I settled into this dude who I hoped had a vested interest in landing safely also. And it was this transcendent, like, oh, I could see the curvature of the earth. Look how small my problems are up here, right? It was this sense of, and
wait, so the earth isn't flat?
Allegedly, right? For sure, people didn't go to the moon, but actually, I think they went to the moon. But there was this sense of resting in a jump, to let go. right? That's belief. Belief isn't holding tight. Belief is letting go. And so if you if you're a believer in some faith tradition and you're on the outs, my challenge would be for 30 days, walk back in the doors. If you've never believed in anything ever, find a friend that you know does and just say, hey, I'm gonna buy coffee, just tell me about it. And not the rules and regulations. Tell me about this love thing that I don't understand. If you are way like, this is insane, this is nuts, my challenge to you is to go outside and just look up to the sky, put your arms up and say, please help me. Am I worthy of being loved? And it's a practice that will slowly let your body know we were never designed to, self-actualization's a myth. We were there, we're here. Yeah. And the body can't hold up. The center can't hold, right? The body can't hold up the universe.
You know what's amazing is I felt this in such a powerful, condensed sense when I was with Laird Hamilton and I was doing all the crazy underwater stuff, right? And he explained to me, he's like, when you get to a point where you just submit that the water is more, because sometimes like needing to have something tangible is what you need. And you have to submit to the water. You're not going to beat the water. If you take a breath, you're going to die, you know, because you're underwater. And that moment where like I opened up my periphery and like saw and like, I'm like, I am so small and like I can submit and I am not in control. And the ironic thing is the amount of control that I felt by stepping out of that control and realizing I wasn't in control was the most empowering thing ever. And it gave me, I mean, it just shattered all these like rate limiting beliefs that I had, right? Because I knew that like, I'm not expected to beat this water, you know, and you go outside, you're like, I'm not expected to control the constellations and the stars. And it's not expected of you. And, you know, whether you're a person of faith or not, I mean, multiple times per day, I will still say the serenity prayer. Because it just makes the most logical sense no matter who you are. It's just certain things you cannot change. And sometimes it takes practice, but I'm with you.
Well, and here's the goal. The goal is not to surrender to something bigger than yourself, to surrender to God so that bad things don't happen, right? That's not the goal. The goal isn't to have friends so bad things don't happen or to work out all the time so bad things don't happen. The goal is to do these things. And I like to look at a glass of water, and by doing these things, I'm releasing that water so that there's very little water in there. Then when I get the call, hey, John, your mom's got cancer. Or, hey, John, we can no longer employ you. Or, hey, your kid's very, very sick and we're rushing him to the ER. Or I spent a lot of years doing crisis work and I had to tell moms, your kid is no longer alive. Your son has passed away. Your husband has died. The world just dumps that water into that glass. And if you're living this non-anxious life, I'm in control. I don't owe anybody anything. I believe in something bigger than me that I can rest in. My relationships are strong. My health is as good as I can be in this particular season that I'm in. Then when life hits you in the mouth, you've done the work to be resilient in its face, right? So the way I like to, a perfect example is my wife's grandmother passed away like just a couple of days ago. Amazing woman in a small Texas town. Because 15 years ago, my wife and I decided, let's stop outsourcing our freedom as a couple, as a family tree, as a legacy, to all these credit cards and banks and what other people think about what we wear and what other people think about what we drive. Let's stop. 15 years later, my wife's grandmother passes away and we bought plane tickets without looking at the cost because we're gonna go. And we got a cheap hotel room without any worry. And so we're gonna show up and we're not gonna be anxious. We're gonna have one of the great blessings of anyone's life, and that's to be really, really sad and really heartbroken without wondering how are we going to pay bills because we had to come to this funeral that we couldn't afford, and we couldn't afford to take off work because of this. That was a choice made 15 years ago. And so living unanxious, right? Living non-anxiously is not about perfect and why do bad things happen? That's not the question. The question is, when they come, who's going to be with you? And how are you going to be able to navigate those things? And so, I'll stop there.
Well, I mean, with that, man, how can people find you? How can they find your book, Not-Anxious Life? Where can everyone just learn more?
And you pick up the book that you so kindly put right here.
There he is.
Yeah, there it is. You can pick it up anywhere you can buy books. It's at all the stores.
7-Eleven?
It's at 7-Eleven, yeah. I saw it in the airport the other day with my daughter, and I was like, see, I'm famous. And she's like, you're not famous, Dad.
Yeah, you're not cool. She's still not cool.
She's not having it at all.
No.
I started autographing them in the airport, and she's like, what are you doing, right? You can buy them anywhere you buy books, and you can follow me at John Delony. Or after you watch the Thomas DeLauer show, you can come over and watch the Dr. John Delony show. I take live calls from people going through various mental health and relationship challenges, and we figure it out live.
Nice, man. Well, as always, keep it locked in here on the channel.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate you, man.